Guys, yet another quick video. Now this one is about creating smoke with Zenith and then using separate colors for the different emitters and then converting these colors to colors of emitted particles from the smoke, exporting them to PRTs so that they could be rendered with the PHX Particle Shader in V-Ray. So starting with Abort Inferno event, and now we have these three spheres to emit from. So let's make this the red bow. Gonna copy it, gonna paste and paste again. So this one is gonna be the blue bow, and hold on, let me make them sand magenta and yellow, like this, almost yellow, so that we don't mistake any UVWs for the actual simulation color. So now we have three colors that are mixing in the simulation, almost mixing, and next I want to spawn. Gonna use Inferno Spawn to create the particles, the complete Armageddon edition. So new event, and they are the particles. So initially they are created just static. In order to make them move, I'm gonna add Inferno properties like this. And then they are gonna start inheriting the velocity automatically just by following the default values. They're gonna start following the velocity of the smoke, but I want them to also take the color. So I'm gonna enable, I can make it into a custom vector channel, but I'm gonna use a map channel this time, and I'm gonna use map channel 0. This is very important for the success of this video. And then in the display operator, in order to see if it's working fine, I'm gonna tell it to use the vertex color data, and this is the map channel. Again, this should correspond to this channel. So I can do this and this, and it's also going to be correct, but I need to keep it at 0 in order for the later stuff in this video to work. So now we have the particles taking the colors of their respective smoke plumes, and next I'm gonna export that stuff like this to PRT files. So I'm gonna enable color, and now this here is gonna allow the color to be exported to the PRTs. Let me just point them to the desktop where I already have a previous PRT sequence. Gonna overwrite it. Alright, and then I'm gonna load this stuff into a PHX simulator. So PHX had the PRT reader before. At one point I made the actual simulator be able to load the PRTs so that it could reuse, the PRTs could reuse many of the existing stuff in the simulator, like retiming, play speed from the input rollout, and remapping of channels. So I think that this way it turned out a bit better, although like most of the things that remained in PHX, it's unfinished. So loading the particles right here, and the colors are showing. So we can also verify it. So now we have 56,000 particles, and they have the position channel renamed to the internal PHX name, velocity, and color. And this is the important thing. They also have the IDs, but the color is right here. So for this to work, it's important to use map channel 0 right here in the Inferno properties. Alright, so they are animating, and now I can also create a particle shader party shader and pick the Phoenix simulator. I'm gonna use the liquid simulator. It doesn't really matter for this kind of setup, but let's do it just in case. So if I render now, first we're gonna render with our node. So I need to change the renderer using V-Ray 6. Render again, getting black render, but it's in the alpha, so I need some kind of a light. So I'm gonna add a V-Ray sun and sky. Move it a bit. I know that it's way too bright, so gonna reduce the intensity 10 times. And I'm getting these white particles still. So the next thing that I want to do, so if I change the particles to be, what color haven't I used in the simulation so far? Okay, so if I make them orange, they're gonna be all orange. In order to for them to pick the varying color, I can use this thing. So there was a time, like a brief period, where in order to color the particles, you had to take the color from a texture and use a particle texture, but this is much simpler. It doesn't need adjusting of the radii and stuff like this. So this is gonna, and also this is faster. So just gonna use color from the particle channel, gonna use the RGB channel, and that's this channel right here, the color Phoenix. So yeah, and when I render again, we're gonna have the proper colors. However, now these particles are quite sparse, so so I can do two things actually. I can use the count multiplier on the particle shader and add more particles at render time in order to make them more congested, but I'm gonna do it the proper way because this doesn't know what's in between the particles. Sometimes it might not be ideal. It's gonna be better if you have enough hard disk space to create larger PRT files. You could just tell the Inferno Spawn to create particles with a couple more zeros. So now they're gonna be slightly 100 times denser. Yay! Depth of the Prodigy Dancer. So now I have to export them like this, and it's gonna take a bit longer. It's gonna produce PRTs that are gonna be a bit larger. But this is gonna allow for a much denser particle cloud, and the particles are not gonna be this thin. They're gonna start casting shadows over one another, and yeah, this entire thing, this is the workflow. So from now on, I'm just gonna be doing stuff just to make it more interesting as a final result to look at, but this was the workflow. So I could not figure out a way to do this without exporting, to render these particles with V-Ray, with the Phoenix Particle Shader, without the intermediate step of exporting them to PRTs. So if you guys figure this out, please let me know. I don't think that there is a workaround. So I tried routing the vertex colors through a particle texture and somehow plug this into the particle shader, but it doesn't know the bounding box of the entire particle cloud. So, and I'm not really sure if this is the only problem. So just the Phoenix Particle Shader, I should have made it read the map channels of the particles, just read the different UV channels, and this way different stuff could be stored in them. But yeah, I no longer have the code, so yeah, anyway, so let's not get into this. And yeah, the thing is that if you manage to find a way, please let me know. Right now, the only reliable way that I found was to use PRTs as an intermediate step. And now that we export all of the PRTs, and also you might not want to use the Phoenix Particle Shader. It's still there. You can still use it even without a Phoenix license, by the way. So in order for the Particle Shader to render, rendering with Phoenix is free. So you could, or at least it was the last time I checked, but you could just install Phoenix without a Phoenix license. You could use the Particle Shader in V-Ray. You just have to have a V-Ray license in order to be able to use the Phoenix Particle Shader to render stuff, and it's faster to render millions of particles that don't need to have geometry attached to them. So this is a bit faster. Also the bubbles, you could do the point mode of the particle shader with V-Ray. You could do the bubble mode of the particle shader with V-Ray, especially for a few years now that V-Ray has the material that you could use for the bubbles that is gonna be correct. Sorry, I forgot the name of the material, but I think that you should know what I'm talking about. And yeah, eventually this might have become faster than using the particle shader, or might become faster in the future, but I think that the particle shader is still useful. So this entire video is because I got a question how to do this kind of thing, so folks are still using it. So now if I render, hold on, now it still has the previous particles loaded, so if I want to update, I'm gonna have to scroll the timeline. Alright, so now they are much denser. I even think that the viewport reduction kicked in. Let me just check. Man, I'm starting to forget some of this stuff. Detail reduction 1, yeah. So the auto reduction kicked in and spread out the particles a little, so it's skipping some of the particles so that they don't kill the viewport. And now, if I render this, it's gonna create much denser particle cloud. And a couple of things to make them look better is, now first we have GI by default in V-Ray, so we could switch the scattering from the fake approximate scattering to the actual ray trace scattering. After the white cache is done, the image should be slightly darker. It's gonna take some time, but yeah, it's still flat, so I'm gonna also increase the shadow strength to something like 4 or 5. I forget what value I used when I was doing a trial run of the scene. Yeah, so now it's gonna look brighter in the white cache pass, but in the final render is gonna be much more contrasty like this. And also you could just go with the bubble mode. Now this is gonna take some time. So first, yeah, it's gonna try removing those particles that are entirely, those bubbles that are entirely inside of other bubbles, or it's gonna try shrinking the bubbles that are intersecting, so it makes it a bit simpler for the algorithm to render this thing later. It's gonna build the tree that is used internally, and it's gonna start rendering the bubbles. Are we gonna see any bubbles now? Appear before us, bubbles. Alright, something starts happening here. Hey, does this still work? Follow mouse. Buckets will follow the mouse pointer. I have a vague memory that this might have worked for the progressive rendering back in the day, but maybe not anymore. I remember that first it had to finish those buckets that had already started, and then it would move to this one, but yeah, it doesn't really seem to be doing anything right now. So maybe it's just in bucket rendering. So it's gonna take some time for the image to clear out, but yeah, these are the bubbles. They are already appearing slightly bubbly at 200% zoom. And yeah, basically that's it, guys. I could keep talking while this clears out a bit, but yeah, I think that you get the idea. So if you have any other questions, any issues, please let me know. Thanks guys for watching, and see you in the next episode. Bye.